The ARM is coming, Xbox announces a new studio, and Sony has a 4 problem. Happy Friday, friends. Another week come, gone, same spiel as always, except this week was a little bit different, right? There were a lot of developer-related events coming from the Googles. Microsoft has their developer-related event next week. There's going to be some Surface hardware, some ARM hardware. Xbox announced a new studio, kind of sort of seemed out of nowhere, some controllers and a whole bunch of other stuff. So there's a lot going on, and of course you can't ignore that Sony dropped earnings this week too, which also dabbles in the world of gaming news. So let's just dive in, my friends. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. Here we go. So Opera, like the browser, has announced that, hey, they're going ARM native as well. Join the fold. Everybody is doing it. It's what all the cool kids are doing because we know what's happening next week. Qualcomm is going to release the processor we've all been waiting for. I shouldn't say releasing the processor, but we're going to get a bunch of hardware next week, at least hardware announcements. And also, speaking of Qualcomm, they're looking to bring Linux to the Snapdragon X platform. So this is really like Qualcomm's big week. Yes, they've announced the chip, but until you find the hardware that you'll be able to buy, which we assume you'll be able to actually purchase in potentially June, it should be a really super duper interesting time in the world of Microsoft. Now, speaking of Microsoft and super duper interesting world, all of their little AI magic is causing a little bit of problem. If you remember, by 2030, they said, hey, we're going to try to reduce all of our carbon emissions. However, as it turns out, when you turn all these GPUs on and suck down all this power and try to power all this AI, it doesn't really work out so well. And actually, their carbon emissions were up 30% according to their own reporting. And yeah, it's a thing they're going to be challenged with here, right? You've got the pursuit of the future of the company. At least they believe in some aspect with this AI stuff, and they're building out data centers like you wouldn't believe and just tossing billions all over the place. Wisconsin, France, and other places to build out these data centers. And there you go. That's going to increase your carbon footprint by quite a bit. And so that's been out this week. And because Build is next week, by the way, like the Windows and everything else news in the industry, at least on the Windows and like Microsoft side, was relatively small compared to like the gaming news that we've had this week because all those announcements are going to be coming, well, next week, to no surprise. However, TechCrunch did get a little bit of a scoop here, although this isn't all that surprising. It says Microsoft's custom Cobalt chips will come to Azure customers next week, and apparently they've got a bunch of people already lined up and using them. And these are their ARM chips, I believe, with 128 cores or something like that. And they're going to be in their data centers and people will be able to use them. And so there you go. Now, the gaming news side, as I've talked about here several times in the short podcast so far, was where a lot of the stuff was really happening this week because, again, things are happening in Build next week. However, elsewhere is a new studio, although new I would put in quotations because it looks like it may have been around for potentially 2 years, but now it's finally like getting some press coverage, I guess, if you will. And this is unrelated to the closures of studios last week. It appears that Microsoft, or I should say Xbox, is really looking at all studios as independent entities, and if they can stand on their own, then they continue to survive, and if they need the corporate capital, then they get really scrutinized. Anyway, elsewhere is a new studio in Poland, and they're going to be bringing, it sounds like next generation, like state-of-the-art sort of narrative storytelling games. It looks like it's new IP, which will be exciting as long as they can get it out the door and get it out in a respectable fashion and build that sort of mystique around a new IP. Launching new IP is very risky. Just keep that in mind from a gaming perspective because launching a Call of Duty, we all know it'll do well. Launching a new Madden, launching a new GTA 6, which I believe has been announced officially for the fall of 2025. Those are like safe releases. When you have the new IP and everything's new, you're taking a risk. However, if it sticks, then it's a huge win at the end of the day. Starfield would also fall into that category because they also have shipped their May update with the coveted 60 frames per second update that many of us have been waiting for. So if you're playing Starfield, you got that to look forward to. That's actually a pretty sizable update. Looking forward to this. Obviously preempts their fall update for Shattered Space, that should bring a lot of new content. Having it at 60 frames per second, I don't think anybody is going to be complaining about that. Also on the Xbox side, you'll soon be able to this is hilarious, but it makes sense. You'll be able to pre-download game updates. So where I think this makes the most sense is there's no more day one update. I'm hoping that's what it gets rid of, right? Remember, you pre-download a game and then you go launch the game on the day of, and then you got to download another update because that's a day one update. So now it sounds like you'll at least be able to pre-download those updates, which is helpful for getting people into games, especially when they're already pre-ordered. Now, super interesting to me is this, I don't want to say little guy, this little controller, unique controller. So it's been, this is Microsoft's new, and they worked with a third-party company to develop a more accessible controller. There's a lot of accessibility announcements this week. The thing that I really like about this, right? This is an accessibility controller, and you can see it's modular and you can move things around. The super cool thing about this is that it doesn't look like an accessibility controller to me. Like, this looks like something that is just awesome and unique, and it doesn't really stand out as, if you know what I mean by, like, it doesn't look like it's an accessibility controller. That's what I mean. You got these little modules that you can move around, and it's completely adaptive, and I think that's super cool that they were able to do that, and that they're bringing it to market, so you can go buy this thing. I think it is more expensive. Actually, I know it's more expensive, but for those who need it, this is an awesome way to just have it's just another option on the table to keep people playing and gaming. Now, also announced this week on the other side of the Xbox coin is the blue side. And Sony announced that they have sold 59.3 million PlayStation 5 consoles. That's a lot of consoles. Now, it is trending below PlayStation 4. And actually, Sony has a really interesting PlayStation 4 problem, because half of the active base, I want to say, I forgot to write the number down, but I thought it was like there's 119 million active PlayStation users, and half are still on PlayStation 4, which means they're not buying a PlayStation 5. Now, the question is, why aren't they buying a PlayStation 5? Is it too expensive? I think we can rule out that it's not that they have trouble finding them, because they're much more readily available these days. And it's like, if you're not upgrading, why aren't you upgrading? Is it not compelling enough? But knowing that half the PlayStation install base is still on a last-gen console really kind of explains why we're not seeing these like true hardcore next-generation titles anymore. Because hey, like if you're building a game for PlayStation, you're not going to rule out 60 million-ish people to just be a PlayStation 5 console. You need those sales. 60 million people, if not many percentages buy that, that's still a lot of sales at the end of the day. Super cool math there, not a lot of percentage peoples. And also on the PlayStation side, according to Daniel, who is an industry analyst, that this is what's kind of not so great for Microsoft. The PlayStation 5 shipped 4.5 million units in the last quarter, according to our estimates. Now, granted, this is an estimate. This is almost 5 times more than the Xbox Series X and XS shipped in the same period. Even if they're off, even if their estimates are off, and it's like 3x more, like that's still a lot more PlayStation hardware hitting the channel, the supply chain channel, than the Xbox side. If you don't have a stocked channel, you have one of two things. Either A, your console's not selling, which is why Microsoft didn't ship as many, or you're completely just sold out and nobody can get them anyways. And I think we can rule out again that it's not they're sold out. It's just that they aren't selling. And that's not great. I kind of think about doing a little bit deeper on this, but I'm kind of genuinely wondering out loud, like, have we passed peak console, right? Was like PlayStation 3, potentially like the Xbox 360, was that like peak console? Or maybe you could argue PlayStation 4, Xbox One, but like this generation just hasn't felt, I don't want to say exciting, because there's a lot of great games and a lot of good developers have built a lot of cool stuff. But it just feels like the need for a console specific piece of hardware is slowly fading, if you know what if you follow the logic here. And it's not just Xbox. Clearly PlayStation is not seeing the same level of success. And the real super interesting thing here is we know a PS5 Pro is coming, and that will juice hardware sales some. However, as I've noted before, it seems like most people who will buy the PS5 Pro are likely hardcore PS5 already players, and they'll just upgrade. Now, they might attract some 4 customers, but I suspect that if you're playing on a PlayStation 4, you're probably playing there for a reason. Either A, you're not playing a ton of games, the experience is fine, or it's just too expensive to upgrade. And let's be real, I don't think a PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be any less expensive. Now, it might lower the cost of the PS5, and maybe that will entice some people. But interesting scenario of things that are going on here. So, interesting stuff. On to the questions of the week, my friends. We've got a handful in the hopper. Zamer24 over on X/Twitter says, what are you looking forward to most out of Microsoft Build? I think it's a combination of hardware and software, I think, is the real answer here, right? We know that the ARM stuff is coming. We know that that's happening, and that is certainly exciting. Hardware always drives excitement, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Surface approaches the ARM devices. We're going to see like the Dell devices. We're going to look and see how all these different vendors are taking the ARM style and what are they doing to help differentiate themselves and build a better product than the other guy to build a better mousetrap. So that side of it. The other big side is going to be Windows AI, this AI Explorer, the 24H2. What is the magic juice that is coming down that Microsoft is? They haven't hyped really anything up. They've talked a little bit about it, but this is their, we believe, I should qualify that, this is their moment to talk about Windows AI and why, right? The key of why. We've already got Copilot doing a lot of stuff. I'm sure there'll be some announcements tied into what OpenAI talked about this week, their ChatGPT 4.0, and where the O is Omega, and they had like the voice personality, like you could have a Cortana, like a legitimate Cortana on steroids. And so we will see. So Jasper says, Brad, what the heck is going on with Xbox? They shut down studios. They opened studios. What are they doing? Do they have any idea? Or is this just sort of Microsoft mixing and matching announcements? That's an interesting sort of theory that I've pondered in my head, is like it looked like this Elsewhere. Which number was that? This one? Yeah. Elsewhere isn't exactly new. And so they had bad news last week, and like maybe this week it just felt kind of right to do this to try to turn that tide a little bit. I don't know. It is what it is. It's Elsewhere. That's the studio. And so that could be part of the pondering that is going inside of the world of Xbox. We do have Hellblade 2 coming up, and obviously Microsoft it looks like they're doing some serious marketing pushes with all of this, although we'll wait and see how it plays out. I'm hoping that the game gets good reviews. I do not have a review copy, but I believe review copies are now in the hands of reviewers, and the reviews will not go live until the game is live. So they're going to go live, which makes me nervous. I'll explain why. So the reviews are going to go live when the game is released. I believe that is the embargo. That is, I cannot confirm that. That's just what the expectation is right now. And it's always a little dicey when things go live at the review time, not like before. Sometimes reviews will go live several hours before it, like during prime time, like 9 a.m. Eastern time or something like that, 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. Eastern time. When things go live, because it's going to be like an odd hour, it just kind of makes you wonder like if expectations aren't super great. We'll find out if this game tanks. I don't even want to think about that. We got Redfall last year wasn't it Redfall last year? It was Redfall, but wasn't it around this time last year? And so, yeah. Yep. Hey, Brad. From Shanigma, I believe is how you pronounce that name. What are we going to get with this AI Explorer? And isn't it just like the timeline continuum feature that we've already seen in Windows? So yeah, so there's a tool, or the expectation is this AI Explorer is like it catalogs everything that you do. And this is a little scary. Catalogs everything that you can do, and then you can naturally query to get back to certain states. So you could be like, hey, what was that PowerPoint app that I was working on 3 weeks ago that had whatever in it? And then it will, in theory, know that. And so Microsoft had a feature called Timeline a long time ago, 2-3 years maybe. So it feels like that, where you could do sort of things where it would capture these states, but it legitimately never caught on because no third-party developer ever took advantage of the things that you had to tie into to make it work, and Microsoft just shut it down. And so now it's back. Like, hey, we're back, and maybe AI can make this useful. We'll see. I think people are going to be more freaked out about anything else. The thing that I really want AI to do, and maybe this is going to solve it, is actually just improve search. At the end of the day, search is the most powerful thing that we have, at least as of right now. And maybe we'll get something better in the future, but search is it. It's like, hey, I need this document. If AI can reasonably surface that material by cataloging what you do, that is super helpful. But what I don't see it helpful for is like, hey, can you pull up the apps I had open yesterday? I don't know if that's going to be super helpful, but we will see sort of what the future holds on that side. And hopefully we'll learn next week. Like, that's sort of the thing we hope to see. So Garfield 39 says, hey, Brad, I am in the market for a PC device. I'm a little hesitant about doing ARM, but do you think I should just bite the bullet and jump in? I think you should wait, candidly. And if you don't have a specific timeline, I would definitely wait. Like, the thing that I think Microsoft is doing correct here is this stuff should be available for back to school season if they start shipping in June, as we expect. Now, if they do ship and arrive, I would just wait. Now, ARM and Windows are not new, right? So the benefit here is, yes, the CPU is new. However, the Windows on ARM is not a new kid on the block. There's a lot more app availability. And it looks like, and I cross my fingers, that battery life, and it should just feel like a normal laptop, and you candidly shouldn't know. That is the hope. And hopefully no fans and long battery life. That's what we've been wanting for a long time. And I think we should hopefully finally get that. That being said, you should still, and I hesitate to even say this, but you should still check out what apps you absolutely are critical for your workflow, because there are still edge cases, like especially if like you're heavy in video editing, that may not be super perfect for on ARM. So we'll keep that in mind. So Matt Bear says, rumors erupted that Microsoft has a no red line as to what IPs will remain exclusive and what will go multi-platform. Assuming there is a red line, where do you think it lays? So here's the conversation. It sounds like more titles are going to end up on PlayStation because Microsoft needs the money. Like, they don't need money, like they can't pay their bills, but like Xbox has to perform in putting titles on PlayStation, which we now know as 120 million monthly active users, I believe it was. It's hard to ignore. So the question becomes, what is the red line? And so reportedly the rumors are there's no red line, but what's the red line? I'm sure there is somewhere of IP that will never end up over on PlayStation. I think it's pretty limited. I would say Halo would be an interesting one. Now, I say that because Halo is Xbox, and putting Halo back catalog content over there on PlayStation side could be lucrative, because that group has never had access to it. However, like if Halo goes over to PlayStation, then there literally is no red line. And I don't even mean if it's just back catalog. If it's back catalog Halo, it doesn't matter. It's that. Gears of War would be another one that kind of feels like it's Xbox only. Forza, something like that. But I think anything newer that comes out, like I know everyone wants to say, well, Brad, just say it. Just say Starfield is never going to PlayStation. Candidly, Starfield is Xbox, but is it like to the core, like the ethos of Xbox? I don't think it is. Like, it's not a Halo, in my opinion. It's not that been around forever, because it hasn't. It hasn't even been around a year. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they ever did do it. I think Microsoft just needs to find a way and a feeling, and maybe it's the Game Pass and subscription service that makes it unique on Xbox. But yeah, I would be absolutely shocked if the conversation is like, hey, should we bring Starfield to PlayStation 5? Like, has clearly happened. It's clearly happened, because that's a conversation worth having. Now, whether or not they're going to greenlight that is a whole different thing. And maybe the model is like, hey, it's a year later, and so you get a year of exclusivity, and then after that, it goes to broader horizons. I don't know. We will find out as Xbox continues to navigate this new future that it finds itself in, and the gaming sort of economy, if you will, finding itself in. Mr. PKI wrapping it up as he likes to do. He says, I heard there was a big Dell roadmap leak on the web this week. Yes, there was. Did you check it out? Yes, I did. Are we about to see more laptops switching to ARMs for chips for ARMs targeted for Windows laptops in 2025? Yeah, so it looks like we're going to get chips this year. Looks like we're going to get, I believe it's chips next year. And then they didn't have anything for 2026. And then it was like 2027. The least shocking thing we should be hearing right now is like, hey, there's like, if you heard, oh my God, they're building new Windows ARM chips for next year and the year after that, like that is how markets work, right? Intel releases a chip every year. AMD, just about the same thing. GPUs, every single, like if those chips didn't exist, I would be way more concerned. Now, the super interesting thing that we did not see in the Dell yet is like we've been hearing rumors that AMD and NVIDIA may also be building ARM chips for Windows devices as the CPU, like much like Qualcomm is doing. We didn't see any of that. So that was what I was hoping kind of like weasel out of there, but we didn't see any of that stuff because I think an NVIDIA-based ARM laptop would be super interesting at the end of the day. Even an AMD, like what can AMD do, right? Traditionally not their market. Could they do it? Certainly could. So we will see. We will see. Super interesting week. I'm excited to see what Microsoft Build will be bringing next week. Look for a lot of news dropping on Monday and Tuesday, and then it'll slow down the remainder of the week. But as always, my friends, make sure to keep yourself subscribed to this podcast, because the only BS here is me.